Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. All right, I'm going to recap the games that I got to play over the weekend. I DM'd one game, my ongoing Storm King's Thunder for 5th edition, and I got to play in 2 other games, 5th edition Saltmarsh game and Dungeon Crawl Classics. So this episode will just be my summaries for those 3 games. So here we go. So let me recap this week's game from my 5th edition Storm King's Thunder. We are in the final chapters of this, so this is not just spoilers. This is big time spoilers. This is what sends you into the final act. This is the big reveal. So again, if you don't want to know spoilers for this module because you're going to play in it or think you may play in it, skip this section of the podcast because this is a pretty major. This is the I am your father moment. For this particular module. So I'm going to have a couple dead seconds of air so you can hit that forward button and then I'll go on. Okay. So what happened is, if you recall from last time, is the party had made it to the Maelstrom, the undersea castle of King Hekaton, king of the Storm Giants, trying to find out why he had gone missing, why the Storm Giants were just incommunicado with the rest of Faerun. And they discovered the 2 eldest of his 3 daughters were playing some music and entertaining some guests who are nobles of the other types of giants who were there at court. And were explained that their younger sister Sarissa had been named regent and the heir, so she was in charge, but she was not available at the moment. But they would make them comfortable until she was able to see them. They're led and put into a room. I talked about this last time, and chatted it up with some of the Storm Giant guards to kind of get the history of what had happened. The queen had gone to pay a visit to small folk on the Sword Coast and never come back. Her body was discovered. Hekaton himself went to the place where her body was discovered to investigate, and then he never came back. And so everything's in disarray. The ordning has been shattered. The Storm Giants can't keep the other giants in line for much longer. Dissension among giant kind. And, of course, they've encountered the cult of the dragon throughout their journeys, getting involved in this mess, and they know that the cult of the dragon is somehow trying to take advantage of this situation. It's not completely clear what's going on because 2 of the dragons that the cult serves have almost come to blows in front of their eyes. So something's not completely clear, but they do know that it would be bad if the stability of giant kind is part of what keeps dragons from running rampant and just taking over everything. So giants and dragons kind of keep each other in check. Anyway, so they were given quarters last time, as I described last time, and then ambushed by the oldest sister of the oldest of the 3 of Hekaton's 3 daughters. And she sort of brought them out, and then in the hallway had these other giant nobles attack them, and then she skedaddled out of there. And so, excuse me. What was her name? Mirren, the eldest daughter of Hekaton. So these 4, there's a fire giant, a cloud giant, a stone giant, and a frost giant who set on the party. They killed the stone giant and the frost giant. They wounded the cloud giant enough that he escaped, ran away, and then they were kind of fighting with the frost giant, or the remaining fire giant, and made it clear to the fire giant, we didn't come here to assassinate anybody. This is what they'd been accused. This is what these people had been. Mirren had accused them of, that they had come to kill the remainders of the royal family like they had killed her parents. That there's dragons involved, and it just so happens this particular NPC fire giant, that's one of their concerns, is anything related to dragons gets their attention because they're terrified, kind of like Duke Zalto was of dragons coming to power. So that gives a pause in the fight. They talk, they do a little diplomacy, and the fire giant says, "I need to take you before Sarissa." So he leads them. So that's where we start off now. He leads them back upstairs into the throne room. They meet for the first time Sarissa, this young storm giant, sitting on this throne. She's sitting on this legendary artifact, which a couple of the party members rolled their history checks and recognized that this is the Worm Skull throne. It's crafted out of obsidian. The 4 feet of the throne are the skulls of blue dragons. It was crafted by dwarves, and then has exchanged hands over the centuries of different factions till it was obtained by Hecaton's wife, Queen Nimir. Queen. What is her name? I got my list of characters here somewhere. Anyway, not important to the summer, to the summary. But she gave it to Hecaton, and it's kind of become a symbol of his power. And to control the dragon, the Worm Skull throne, it has a lot of powers inherent in it. You have to have this rod that the dwarves also created. It's kind of a scepter. You have to attune to it. Well, it's sized for a dwarf to hold, so Sarissa has got it around, is kind of wearing it like a pendant around her neck. But to the left is her uncle, Uthor, who is the Hecaton's brother. And to her right sits another female storm giant, who is introduced as Mimithur. And of course, the other two sisters are in there pleading their case, along with the cloud giant that they had routed, and trying to say, "Hey, these mortals have gone crazy. They've attacked us. They're loose. We need to do something about it." Of course, the fire giant leads them in and refutes that, and this debate breaks out as to what's really going on. The 2 older sisters immediately, seize them, attack them, kill them, whatever. But Sarissa's wanting to hear, "Tell me your story. Tell me how you got here. Tell me why you're here. I want to hear it from you." She has some sympathy and some kindness for small folk. She's a little more level-headed than her sisters. So she wants to hear the whole story. So they tell their story, and as soon as they've told their story, of course, people start refuting it, including this older female storm giant who's up on the dais with her, seated there as an advisor, who she refers to as her aunt. This debate breaks out, and there's all kinds of everybody keeps arguing and talking back and forth and comparing notes, and the party has already suspected that these 2 older sisters have conspired to get rid of their parents. And at some point, the advisor, she says, "You can't trust these small folk. They're probably the ones that murdered your mother and have imprisoned your father." And I said it really quick. I didn't know if anybody would catch up to it, but immediately a couple of the players were like, "Now, nobody ever said he was in prison. What's going on here?" So they're like, I don't think this person is. She's in on this somehow. And so I had them roll some insight checks, and Halfgrim, the dwarven cleric, I sent him a whisper message so that only he could see it, that her face looks really familiar. You can't quite place it. So he leans forward and kind of whispers to somebody else, we have seen her somewhere before, and I can't. Something about her face is familiar. So the other person's like, "Oh yeah," and so what they realize is this is Imrith, and she is in a storm giant. She has changed herself into a storm giant, but her face looks sort of like the human form that they encountered her in many sessions back when she killed Harshnag, their giant companion, and tried to kill them. And so Imrith has inserted herself into the court of the Storm King. So she immediately, starts cursing him in dragon. She reaches over, she snatches the pendant off of Sarissa's from around her neck. And because it's out of Sarissa's possession, she's no longer attuned to it. One of the consequences of the Worm Skull Throne is if you sit on it without being attuned to that scepter, you become paralyzed and you get surrounded by this field of magic. And so they see this happen. The male storm giant, Sarissa's uncle, goes to try to wrest this thing away from, kind of wrestle Imrith and pin her. Nobody has yet realized this is a dragon other than the party, because all hell is broken loose. And so there's a couple of brief rounds of combat before Imrith says, "I will release Sarissa if you stand down and leave me be." So they all take a step back, and she... in the meantime, of course, the fire giant has kind of grabbed one princess. The cloud giant, who they had fought in just earlier, seeing kind of the tides have turned, goes and helps try to wrestle the other evil princess, and along with some of the guards to hold them in place. And so Imrith begins to cast a spell, and they realize just at the last second what she's casting is teleportation, and she teleports away. But right as she does, she taps the pendant to the throne and unparalyzes Sarissa, and then disappears. And as she's kind of blinking out of existence, they can see her slowly beginning to transform back into a dragon. They see kind of her wings emerge and her neck start to elongate, and but they don't see the full transformation. So then they're left to decide what to do. What are we going to do? So they question they separate the two sisters. They question them. They both initially are accusing each other of. It was her. She was doing it. I didn't betray anybody. I was just going along to get information so I could help. The back and forth. But what they finally realize is that, of course, these two sisters are evil. They're resentful that their youngest sister was made heir to the throne. So they conspired with Imrith, who they also believe was a storm giant. They say this Imrith has been a part of court for a long time, so we had no indication she was anything other than a giant. So this has apparently been a long plot that's being hatched. They both kind of agree. They want, if their father is alive and in prison, they want him to come sort it out. He'll sort it all out correctly. Of course, they're trying to save their skin. And the giants are not going to let, these are giant royalty, they're not going to let these small folk dispense justice on them. So they go back to talk to Sarissa after they've questioned each of them and compared notes and sorted out, Imrith manipulated them, but doesn't really absolve them of the fact that they've been complicit in the murder of their mother and the imprisonment somewhere in an unknown location of their father, which has caused all this chaos among the ordering of giants, which Imrith is a dragon, and this will allow dragons to get the upper hand in this ongoing rivalry between giants and dragons. So Imrith teleported out, as I said. They don't know. They know because she's not like a dragon of some. She's a dragon of some fame. They know that her lair would be in the Honorok Desert in Faerun, but precisely where, that's a huge piece of territory, and without a map or other information, they wouldn't be able to pinpoint the location. Sarissa, in the meantime, entreats them that if you can find some clues to help us find my father, right? If we can find Hekaton and release him, that may be at the dragon's lair, but if it's somewhere else and we can get him back here, he can line up everything with the giants, and we can take care of Imrith together, all of us. So, and they notice as she's talking to him, she's got, when they come back into the throne room after they've questioned the sisters, she's been crying because this is the equivalent of like a 19, 20-year-old young adult barely out of adolescence. So she's been crying. Of course, I guess you don't have to be a kid to cry over the loss of your parents, but you kind of set the scene. This is this young kind of ruler who's heir to the throne, but wasn't probably quite ready for this responsibility. But she's looking at something in her hands, and so as she's telling them about her mother and her father, and she shows what she's got, and in her hand it appears tiny, and it's this wooden disc roughly the size of a little bit bigger than a coin, with a brass goose, outline of a goose on it. And just luck of the draw, the guy who's playing Calmer, who's a warlock, he chose as his background gambler. So I didn't have to roll anything. I said, Calmer knows exactly what this is. This is a token, it's basically a poker chip, from a gambling house in Yartar, the Golden Goose. You would know this. You've probably been there. You've probably been thrown out of there. In fact, I didn't say that. He said, yeah, I'm probably not. I know where that is. I don't know if I'm welcome back there. So, his history is as kind of a scumbag and a gambler. Anyway, so he knows what it is. And she says, I'd never seen this until the queen died and they recovered her body and this was with her. And I just assumed it was a gift or a little token that a human or an elf or somebody gave her as a token of friendship. But they think, well, Yartar's kind of a shady place. Maybe somebody there knows something. So they're going to go to Yartar and try to sort it out. So, the Kalmar, who is he's a paladin warlock multi-class. He's half drow. He says, well, do you have any items or artifacts that we might help? I mean, they're starting to get over their head. I start rolling dice and they see the die roll, and then I'm like, well, that's actually a 30 end result. They realize they're tangling with some pretty powerful forces. So we let them look in the vault, and it said to roll 1d4 on a particular magic item. And man, they pretty much almost got the perfect set of magic items. You couldn't have asked it if I'd planned it. The first thing they rolled up was a dwarven thrower, which fits Halfgrim, the dwarven forge cleric, to a T. And he's going to get it because only dwarves can attune to it. They rolled up a dancing rapier. Well, Kane, one of the party members, fights with a rapier. He's got a giant slaying rapier. Well, he can now set the dancing rapier for 4 rounds to fight on its own, and then use his own rapier. And get the benefit of its giant slaying property as well. So that worked well for him. The thing that didn't quite fit anywhere was the scimitar of speed that they rolled, because at that point everybody's kind of got better options for their melee. So they're going to try to, when they get back to land, see if they can call on some of their contacts and see if they might trade it for something of equal potency, or of something of value that might be worth it to them. Because the Storm Giants show they've got this vault of all these treasure and loot and magic items and artifacts they've kind of hauled in from shipwrecks and the bottom of the ocean. She gives them a potion of giant size as well, which they give to Dor, the Goblin Barbarian. I can tell you from direct experience in 5e, playing a barbarian enraged and under the effects of a potion of giant size it's a lot of fun. You basically become a kaiju. Anyway, so he's got that available to him when the time comes if they need it. And then there's also an apparatus of Qualish. So they're like, what's that? And I'm like, well, it just looks like this big iron lobster. And they're like, we want that, So they got to play around and explore the what all the levers do, and they're going to take that with them, and to have it on hand when it might come in handy. So they asked the Storm Giants to teleport them to Yartar, where they will make contact with the Harper safe house in Yartar, since they are now more or less Harpers, and then visit this Golden Goose casino and figure out what they can find out for the next time. So that's where we left off. There are 2 chapters left in the adventure. So this is going to coming up on chapter 11 of 12. So we're getting close to the end. Anyway, that's what happened with Storm King's Thunder. Dungeon Crawl Classics was a game I got to play again on Saturday morning. The game master, or the judge as it's referred to in DCC, once again, Carl Rodriguez, who does the GMologist Presents podcast here on Anchor. I'm playing a cleric, Burnfried. Other players include Jason Connerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, playing Idris Khan, who is a necromancer. Arlen Walker of the Live from Pellin's Wasteland podcast and YouTube channel, playing Ardath the Warrior. And then we have another player who does not have any kind of streaming show or anything like that, who plays Otto the Dwarf. When we pick up from last time, we had holed up in a room in kind of the one of the corner towers of this small castle in a marsh that we had come up on. Previously, we had come in to explore the castle and were immediately attacked. We're also trying to get away out of this dangerous forest where there didn't seem to be a place safe to rest. But when we came in, we had killed a hag and a troll and a bunch of these bizarre, aberrant plant creatures. And then figured we needed to... Some of them got away, so we knew they were lurking elsewhere in the castle. Because we had killed a hag, we figured there were probably 2 other hags in the castle. Hags tend to form covens of 3. And so we locked ourselves in this room and posted a guard to try to recover some of our spells, because we were starting to run low on spells. I had acquired quite a bit of deity disfavor, and it was starting to get pretty risky to cast spells. Idris, the wizard, had lost some of his spells for the day, so we just got time to take a rest. So, but we holed up in this chamber last time, and it's above a dungeon, and there's a huge troll underneath us. It can't get out. There's a grate in the door, but it's sniffing the air and roaring challenges, and we can tell there's something off about it. It's maybe not completely, maybe it's insane, or it's had some kind of head injury and isn't quite all there. Not that trolls are that bright to begin with, but it seems to be trying to challenge other trolls in the castle, not really us, but that doesn't mean it's not going to attack us. So we decided to rest there. And then when we managed to rest, but we woke up and we'd regained ourselves, and I was able to heal people and get us reset. But we can hear sounds outside. We can tell there's a lot of feet moving around, probably more of those plant creatures. There's the troll is roaring challenges, so we figure there's at least one other troll out there. And sure enough, a hag screams to the door to, that we killed her sister. This hag is named Ungrela, and we killed her sister, Telerak. But if we return the cauldron, we'd also taken this hag's cauldron. She was in the midst when we killed her of some kind of ritual. So we have it in there as return the cauldron and she'll let us go. So we think, well, what are we going to do? So the plan we came up with was to open the grate, and we knew the stones around it were loose. It was kind of a dungeon trap anyway. And try to get the troll to climb out. Since it really wants to fight another troll, maybe it'll just ignore us. And if we just, let it climb out and throw open the door, maybe it'll charge up there, and we can use that as a distraction to our advantage. So Idris casts fly on all of us, so we're able to fly up to the roof of this room. And then, sure enough, we open the grate, loosen the stones, fly up. The troll climbs out. I think Otto was actually kind of hovering by the door and opened it so the troll could dart out. And then it immediately pounces on another troll. Oh, I forgot before that. My character did something pretty cool. The hag starts chanting a spell, which Idris identifies as invisibility, but he does not have a spell in his repertoire that can be used to counter that. However, I have a spell called Second Sight, and Carl ruled that could be used to, since it's a type of clairvoyance. Even though you can see the future, it is kind of a divination spell, and maybe you can predict in some way of where the hag would be if she were to turn invisible, even though you can't physically see her. So I cast the spell, close my eyes. This third eye appears on my forehead. I'm burned for my forehead, burned for his forehead, my character. And I'm able to counter the hag's spell so that we can see her when the door gets opened. So the also before the troll crawls out of the pit, Idris casts color spray, and he rolls like a crit. It's a critical effect, and it lights up the entire first floor. The light goes through cracks and through under doors and lights up the whole first floor of this castle, and obliterates some of the weaker creatures waiting outside. By the time we then throw the doors open, there's 2 trolls out there and a hag. Both trolls are blinded. One of them is unconscious. The hag is blinded and unconscious. So our troll dives on one of the stunned trolls, and Ardith swoops down and he tosses the cauldron to me, which I didn't catch it, but I just floated down and grabbed it. Goes off to hack up the unconscious troll while he's got time. Since I'm flying, I got in the cauldron and just said, well, I'm going to get on the cauldron and squat down and grab the rim of the cauldron and fly. And it kind of looks like the cauldron's flying and I'm riding in it, but it's actually me flying. And I fly out into the main room where the behind our troll. Otto flies out there. Idris gets out there. Otto finishes off the hag. The troll is in the process of finishing off the other troll, and we'd really not made it clear what we wanted to do with this troll. My thought was maybe try to ally with it if we could get it to tolerate our presence, but Jason, I think, decided, rightly so, that this thing is half out of its mind. It's going to turn on us as soon as it doesn't have another troll to fight or something to eat. So he again casts color spray, again rolls a critical, and just blasts this troll. The big troll, it doesn't kill it, but it dazes it and it blinds it and it confuses it, and so it kind of turns around and scuttles back and finds its way back and falls back down into its dungeon. So we hack up the 2 other trolls and throw them in a fire. Idris searches the hag and finds some magic items. I cast detect magic, roll a critical. I think between the 3 of us, or the 2 of us casting spells, I think we had 4 critical successes on spell casting. So that was pretty cool. So I'm now for the next, I don't know how many. I mean, he critted on his fly spell, so we're all able to basically fly for the rest of the day and have double the normal carrying capacity, which is kind of why I can lift that cauldron underneath me, like it's and carry it around as like a chair. So I can basically be able to detect magic for the next hour or so, and not only just detect if something's magic, but pinpoint exactly the property. So we find a potion of healing. She has the hag had a comb that once per day when you comb your hair with it, you can cast Alter Self. Previously, we had recovered a magical dagger, which turned out to be a magical throwing dagger that returns. The cauldron is a cauldron of creation, which is used to create these plant abominations. So we decided to hold on to it, and maybe we can leverage it against the third hag that we assume is in the castle. But ultimately, we want to destroy it. I think me as a cleric realizing that it creates only abominations. Idris is a wizard who serves a patron who is a patron of wastes and deserts, and so he really doesn't like this green, verdant place we've come to. So anything associated with creating these kind of creatures, he's down to destroy as well. So, but we're going to hold on to it for now. Anyway, we explore some more of this area, trying to just basically see what's in here. We finished looking through the kitchen. We go down a hallway. There's a curtain. I pull back the curtain, and I'm hit with this cloud of yellow spores. It nauseates me, and it saps my stamina down quite a bit, pretty low, and I basically effectively lost 10 hit points to my max hit points until I can recover all that lost stamina. So I get back from that and a couple rounds, I'm finally able to shake it off. But there's a statue behind there that has no head. In the adjoining room, we find a bookshelf with skulls adorned with helmets, but one of them isn't a skull; it's a statue's head. So obviously, it seems to be the missing head of this statue. So we try to burn away. Ardath tries to burn away with a torch those spores, and he gets a little minor exposure to them, so he loses some stamina as well. Actually fares worse than I do, but he manages to clear it out. We put the head on the statue. It just basically recites, that we're doomed and we should leave now. There's no hope for us here. We'd encountered a couple of statues like that outside the castle. You cross the bridge to the gate. So Arlen tried to talk to it, ask it a couple of different questions, and it just kept repeating the same message. So I took the head off and set it back down on the floor. So we go back into the adjoining room and we find a pantry and open the pantry door. I do, because, I'm kind of curious as a priest of the god of mysteries and puzzles. And we can tell it used to be a pantry, but it's turned into a shrine. There's a skeleton lying on a bed, a canopy bed. There's been, look like offerings of coins piled on it. She's also wearing, we assume it's a she by some of the context. Has got a silver diadem around his head. So just as I'm kind of taking in the room and seeing what's there, the canopy bed, the top of the canopy comes alive and swoops down, and it turns out it's a cloaker, which is an awful, awful, nasty monster in D&D and D&D adjacent games to fight. Particularly, you don't want to be against one by yourself, and I'm the only one in the room right now. So it engulfs me. And I managed to cast a paralysis spell, even when it had me wrapped up, and touch it, because I'm just in there. So I'm not that hard to just make physical contact with it with my hand, but it shrugged it off. And so, I was going to stun it and paralyze it and then extract myself. And then last time I did that to a monster, it lasted long enough that we were able to just basically hack it to death. No luck here. And my rolls went downhill pretty much from there on every saving throw, and I failed every spell check, and I started to accumulate disfavor. So anyway, it lets me go. Everybody else starts trying to get in there to help me. But actually, before it lets me go, I'm sorry, I didn't get to let me go. What got it to let me go is first Otto hits it with an axe and discovers that I'm going to take half the damage for being inside of it. So they say, well, we can't hit it directly. It's got a tail that it's trying to sting people with, though. So Ardath manages to grab the tail and slam it against the wall, forcing it to let me go. And at this point, I'm, laying on the floor. It shrieks. It causes this nausea effect on me. And I'm down to 1 hit point, and I'm nauseated. I can't do anything. I can't focus to attack or cast spells, so I just crawl out the door. It nauseates other people. It eventually induces a panic in Ardath, and he has to drop his weapons and run for 2 rounds. So I'm out in the hallway, sick, unable to do anything. Ardath has run back to the front of the castle, and it turns on Otto the dwarf and kills him. Well, it doesn't kill him. It drops him to 0, and you've got so many rounds in DCC to save somebody before they die. I think it's 1 round per level, and we're 6th level, so it wasn't an immediate crisis, but not something you want to let linger. And then it engulfs Idris, the necromancer, and flies out. And then Jason remembers, hey, we're all flying, right? So this thing is just engulfed its own. Can I still see, or am I completely covered? And Carl was like, well, you can still see. It's just got its kind of mantle-like wings wrapped around you. He goes, well, I'm going to fly around the corner into the fireplace. So he flies out the door and towards the fireplace, and the thing lets go of him as it realizes what's about to happen. And Idris then flies back into the room and administers that potion to Otto, which allows Otto to get back up. And he also casts choking cloud on this thing. And because he can cast 2 spells, I mean, this is not all happening in the same round. There's some back and forth with me trying to avoid this thing since I can't do anything. But with some fancy, because we're flying, we're able to kind of do this. But Idris Khan, Jason's wizard, also starts using choking cloud on this thing, and he gets a major roll, which causes this big cloud that does damage. And of course, it moves. He can move it if the creature moves out of it. Jason can cause it to move to chase him. But in his other castings, he doesn't roll as high, but he rolls successful, and he's summoning these smaller choking clouds that will actually kind of stick to the person and follow them wherever they go. They don't do damage, but they cause they cause it to have cumulative penalties. So we get this thing to the point where it can't hit because it's got so many of these little clouds bothering it and zapping at it that Ardath, the warrior, shakes off his panic, goes back, retrieves his magic greatsword, and pretty much then proceeds to chase it around the castle, hacking it to death. I tried a couple times to turn it once I got my abilities back and could concentrate. And again, I was rolling poorly, so I couldn't turn it as considered an abomination. And since I'm a neutral cleric in DCC, I can do that. I did finally manage to heal myself successfully up from 1 hit point. And then that's where we stopped. And I think Otto the dwarf looked in one final room, and he found a couple other magic items. He found a medicine bag, which it's up like a medicine bundle. If you wear it, it speeds up your natural recovery. So we give that to Ardath to try to help we rest up him get his stamina back, and then I think he and I will probably be passing it back and forth as we try to get ourselves back up to full. Actually, I misspoke. I did manage to turn the thing once. I failed, and I spent some luck and managed to turn it just enough to kind of give Idris some time to cast spells on it. I forgot to mention that. So we had some pretty good use of magic between the two of us. I think Jason definitely spells were more effective. I had a couple of good things that I did, but with my detect magic and that one turn thing, but a successful turn. But he really did. His spells were going off a lot better than mine. Nonetheless, we all got the crap beat out of us. So we're gonna have to rest up and recover because I don't know if we could go through that again. Because we started the day at full strength, and after 2 fights, that could have gone really bad. And that troll that jumped in Carl kept rolling for what happened to that troll, and he was still down in his cave, kind of confused and whimpering. And when that wears off, he might be kind of mad at us. So anyway, we don't know if we're going to play again in 2 weeks because that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But the next time I play, I'll definitely have another summary. It was a lot of fun. Again, appreciate playing with this group, and appreciate all their what they contribute to the game, and especially Carl for running the game. So that is it for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Oh, and I had forgot to mention in the segment I just recorded that we also found a page there towards the end with that the other magic items we found with the medicine pouch, and there was an iron flask that I identified as being cursed. If you open the flask, there are 5 curses on it, and you one of them, you take on one of them. I'm going to try to figure out what the curses are over time, and if it's, again, it's a cursed artifact that needs to be disposed of, or maybe if it's something we can use to our advantage at some point. But there was a fragment of someone's memoirs, just a page, and most of it's unintelligible, but we get a clear segment towards the end of the page that says, "And it is indeed sure that the place was the doom of fair Xenoxen, for none could have emerged alive from the demoniacal trap in the tower of Tolgranic. and with her was lost the holy blade, which would have opened the final barrier before the greatest mysteries of Aurelian. But now I see more clearly what folly it was to try and unearth the same mysteries. So we're assuming, until we find evidence otherwise, that the dead woman in the shrine may have been this as an oxen person who died here in the tower. But that might also mean that there's some sort of holy blade somewhere, amongst treasure or in the hands of the remaining monsters. We don't know. But that'll be part of the mystery that we continue to try to solve when we play again. The final game I played in this week was 5th edition Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We're on a bit of a side quest. I mean, it's related to the goings-on in the area. But this isn't a group of any of the anchor podcasters or other people, so to preserve people's anonymity until someone tells me otherwise, I'm just going to describe the other characters of the group. But suffice to say, it's been a fun group to play with and a good DM. So I'm having a good time. I'm again playing Sir Hartwin, who is a knight. He's a paladin, but he's got the oath of the crown, so he's a knight in the service of the King of Keeland, because we're in the Flyness and Greyhawk, not canonical Greyhawk, but a version of Greyhawk. And he has been kind of sent to make contact with this budding group of heroes who have thwarted some pirates and smugglers and been of benefit to the city of the town of Saltmarsh. So as I joined the group, the established group includes a human wizard named Benny, a cleric named Orbar, a ranger named Keegan. I think he's a half elf. And then I'm one of two new party members. We've got a swashbuckler named Steed, who's also a human. I'm sorry. There's a Triton warlock, who is one of the original party members as well. Refers to himself as Speaker. He's got the Deep One pact, I believe. The cleric is a storm cleric. So there's a lot of nautical theme going here, since it is Saltmarsh. So I previously, not everybody could play the last session, so Keegan the ranger and my Sir Hartwin, my paladin, had gone to investigate these mines where miners had been disappearing, and we encountered some pretty tough undead that barely got out. So we sent word back to town. We needed the full party to go back, so that everybody else shows up. We go back into the mines. We do find some more dwarves who have barricaded themselves in where they could be safe, but of course they can't stay there forever. And they indicate the direction in which the undead that they encountered had come from. So we proceed down this mine tunnel down the track, and we come to a bridge over an underground river. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the undead are stationed across the bridge and on the ledges on either side of the chasm, and it's not just a straight up melee fight. So it took my character 3 or 4 rounds to really get into the action. But the wizard, we start getting shot at. There are firearms. We're using firearms, so we're getting shot at by both arrows and black powder weapons. So I'm standing up front, get shot. The warlock is standing up front, gets shot. He casts a fog cloud to obscure their vision so they can't see us anymore. We kind of back into the tunnel. And then he and the cleric proceed forward with the protection of this fog cloud, and the rest of us kind of coming up behind. Also, because it's dark and most of us are humans, we've got 3 torches burning, so we're, pretty much easy targets otherwise. So we get out to the middle of the bridge. The warlock, because he's a nautical themed and there's water below, he goes ahead and jumps off into the water below because he knows he can be safe, and he manages to hit. There's some whites on the other side of the bridge, which I can't see at this point. I'm just having to rely on everybody else to tell me what's happening. Hits one with a magic missile. Really, it's everybody else I was the last one to get into the action because I didn't really have any good ranged attacks on me. I just had to cross the bridge until something was close enough in my torchlight that I could engage with it. But the first white on the other side of the bridge was pretty much softened up. In fact, I got up to attack it with a double move, but before my turn came back around, someone killed it with a range attack. But then I could see the second one up ahead, so that one I closed in on. Meanwhile, the swashbuckler had made his way down below and was working his way around the edge where the water was, and encountered some zombies, some aquatic zombies, and he and the warlock, between the two of them, did a pretty good job of taking those out. They got a little help from spellcasters above on the bridge. The cleric, now having a fog cloud about him, class summon lightning, or call lightning, and use that spell 2 or 3 times. Orbar the cleric. But we had these same skeletons we fought last time that had these ability to just do ungodly damage with their arrows, and we they were just whittling away at our hit points. I got out of their range when I charged this last white, and this was really cool. This was kind of my special moment. I get up on it. It does a little bit of damage to me. It actually drains some hit points, but I'll recover with the rest. And it wasn't too many of my max hit points that it took off, so my character will be okay. But I fight with a great sword as my primary weapon, although I have a flail as a backup weapon when I fight for skeletons and things like that resist other damage but are especially vulnerable to bludgeoning. So I attack with a great sword and rolled a crit as a paladin. So I decided to smite. So I did, I think 31 points of damage because I critted with the smite. And then with my second attack, I did, I think, 10 or 11 more points and killed it. So the DM said, describe what happened. So I was like, well, I just run it through with my sword and then channel the, smite into it. And this bright flash of radiant energy just emits from its chest. And then I pull my sword out and on the backstroke, behead it. So that was pretty cool. They're still fighting with the zombies down below, but they've got the upper hand. So I turned back around and head for these skeletal archers that were causing such problems. Again, other people are fighting throughout the rounds and doing things pretty, helping with ranged attacks. But I use a strategy I figured out on the last ones because these have this kind of roguelike ability to take a bonus action and move, and they can just keep hiding away and shooting at you. So we figured out last time because I've got a belt of giant strength, they can't get away from me if I grab them. So I run up to the closest one, I grab it, I smack it with my flail. The cleric gets hit. He's still on the bridge. He gets hit and goes down, but he's still within 30 feet of me, so I use my Channel Divinity for my Oath of Crown Paladin that's able to give him some hit points back. And the ranger ran over and applied a Cure Light Wounds as well. So he got some strength, not just save, but he got a good amount of hit points back. He cast Shatter on the other two skeletons. One of them failed its strength save to not be forced movement, and he pitched it off the ledge down to the rocks in the water below. The other one was, and the extra damage killed it. The other one passed, but still took the damage from the Shatter spell. I had this other one grabbed. It chose initially not to try to get away from me and just stab me with a sword for a little bit of damage. So when it came back to my turn, because I had it grabbed and is stronger, then I just moved it along with my movement and angled my path of movement that as I drug it along beside me, its feet dangled off the ledge and I just dropped it, and then it, of course, takes the bludgeoning damage from the fall, and because it's a skeleton, it doubles the damage. And then charged the other one, and that was just my movement, and then letting go of my grab from the previous thing, so I still had both my attacks. So I charged the other one and attacked it with my flail with 2 attacks and killed it. So I felt like I'd done my tank duty and my paladin duties for the day. And the cleric returned some healing to me when the battle was over, and that's where we wrapped up. So it was a pretty good fight, pretty exciting, and had a good time. And this was more of we just went a little deeper in the dungeon and fought some monsters, and then it was time to call it an evening. They had done some role playing for the first part of the session just to establish what was going on in town while our characters were engaged in our exploration of these mines in the previous session, and then they pretty quickly came to find us and joined us. So anyway, that's the Ghosts of Saltmarsh for this week. That'll just about do it for this episode. I want to thank you guys for listening. Hope you'll come back for the next episode. Here, I should be posting something there in the next few days. Always, give me a call, ask questions, give me feedback. Love to hear from people who are out there. And thanks again for listening. And that's it for this episode of The Arcane Alienist. I want to thank Dave Bone for the cover art that I use for the episodes. Check out ironseer.com. And the music is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. Thank you for listening. Give me a call sometime through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website. And I'll be back in the future with another episode.